Good morning. Starting a little earlier this morning because I baked some muffins and I want you to be able to see them. Hey, Paula. I shared the recipe and I wanted to kind of talk you through it because they're so simple and easy to do. My girlfriend, Glenda Jones, and I love to cook. She's the baker. And I had a banana recipe that I really liked, a banana muffin recipe, and then she had one that she really liked. And I kind of took some from hers and some from mine and put them together to make this recipe. And it's at the beginning of the feed, so you can just go back to the top to see the feed. But they're really simple and easy to make. You need a half a cup of non-dairy milk, half a cup of oil, a tablespoon of lemon juice. I add a teaspoon of flaxseed meal. You also need, let me see here, a tablespoon of alcohol-free vanilla, 3/4 cup sugar, 2 bananas that are mashed, a cup of white whole wheat flour, a cup of unbleached flour, a tablespoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 to 1 cup of nuts. I used walnuts this time, and those are my favorite, probably next to macadamia nuts. So you put everything in the liquid, and I also just posted some pictures. You'll probably be able to see that after this session is over. But you put your liquid into a measuring cup, and that's what I do. Hi, Cheryl. And then I can just measure as I go. A half a cup of milk, a half a cup of oil. Then I put in my vanilla and my other stuff. Then I add the mashed bananas, and then I add the sugar. And I kind of whip that up first, whisk it together. And then I put the dry ingredients in another bowl, pour them in the bowl, mix it up together, scoop them out, and put them in your baking pan, and you have these amazing muffins. Now, they started out as banana muffins, but because Glenda and I like to experiment, what I like to do is if I want to make them apple, I'll use a medium apple instead of the bananas, and I will grate the apple up, peel included. If I want to make a mango, I'll put maybe like half of a large mango mashed in it. I have done it with pumpkin, and I've done it with sweet potato. And then you, of course, can add whatever spices that you like that go along with the flavor that you're doing. Hey, Cheryl, I see you. Hey, Leroy, good morning. Lorene, I see you too. Tell everybody they can come on in. Then what I like to do is ice mine. And I have them sitting up here. I don't know if you can see them. As I ice the others, you'll be able to see it. This is what the muffin looks like when it's done. And then I like to take a little confectioner's sugar and then ice it on top like that. And when it comes to confectioner's sugar, if you're eating the way that I eat, which is plant-based, you don't want to use traditional white sugar because that traditional white sugar is processed using the bones of animals as they refine it. So I use the natural sugar, the turbinado, the evaporated cane juice, whichever one I get at the store. And then that provides a dilemma of what do I do for confectioner's sugar? Well, here's the recipe. You take 1 cup of traditional natural sugar, your evaporated cane juice or your turbinado, and you put it in the blender with a tablespoon of cornstarch, and you blend it till it's really fine. And then you have confectioner's sugar. And if you in the grocery store and you look on a box of confectioner's sugar, all it is sugar with cornstarch in it. And so what I tend to do is make it up a bunch at a time and then just store it in a container so that I'll have it ready when I need to, like I did this morning to make these delicious muffins. My husband wants to know, are we going to be able to eat these later? Yes, we will. Do we have any questions from anybody? Hey, my friend Pernessa, I see you. Vivian, good to see you this morning. Camille, I see you too. We're so glad you're here. Please make sure that you tell somebody else about what we're doing this morning. The recipe is already posted. I've also posted pictures of the step-by-step process so that you can see it. I see somebody's mouth going like that. You can use whatever kind of nuts that you want. One other thing, the baking powder that I use is a baking powder called featherweight baking powder. And one of the reasons I use featherweight baking powder is because your traditional baking powders, although they do a great job of making quick breads, Your traditional baking powders have aluminum in them, which we know is harmful to the body and the brain. And they also have baking soda. And there have been some benefits of baking soda, but baking soda kills all your B vitamins. So I have found that featherweight baking powder is the one that works best for me. And I get that from health food stores. You can get it online. It's in a can that looks like this. This is the featherweight baking powder that we use here. And it doesn't have any of the negative ingredients in it, so you don't have to worry about it. And the other thing too, most of your baking powders have a lot of sodium in them because the baking soda is in it. And so if you're trying to cut down on your sodium intake, that's another way to look. And as much cornbread as we eat, we need to make sure that we're using something that doesn't have all of that. Before the session gets started, are there any questions about this recipe that I can answer for you? Good morning, Vivian. I'm going to stack these over here so you can see them piled up behind me. There we go. Any question about the recipe? Yes, you can definitely go to the YouTube channel. Thanks, hon, for saying that. And on the YouTube channel, we have 8 episodes of the cooking show that are available. We have also started adding other shorter videos, the ones that we're doing at the television station, and the ones that my partner, producer, Anthony Perkins, are doing as well. I'm hoping that everyone had a really great week. I really enjoyed our session last week talking about food and its impact on the body. And I was impressed this week to start off our session today by talking about a few more things about diet. Because whenever I talk about food, I get just real excited. And there's so much in my head that I want to say that I don't always get to say it. And I wanted you to be clear on some things. And then because I believe in God and the Creator, there are some biblical comparisons that will strengthen your decision as you do it. When we talked about nutrition last week, we were talking about the power of plant foods. And the plant foods that have been created by God literally have these phytochemicals in them that protect the food. But when we, the humans, eat the food, it releases the phytochemicals in our body to protect our body from the onslaught of illness. And so we talked about a bunch of different foods that you could eat. Today, the banana muffins that I made, we use whole grain flour. We use bananas, of course, and we use walnuts. And the bananas and the walnuts provide serotonin, melatonin ingredients to help people sleep better at night. Your walnuts also give you the good kind of fat. The walnuts then, of course, would be good to fight against heart disease, against breast cancer and other cancers, just by the fact that you're eating those foods. I use a soy milk in it. I don't have any problem with soy, but if you don't want to use soy, you could use another milk because of the benefits and all of the phytochemicals that are there. And when we decide to eat more plant foods, we just release all this power in our system. Well, the opposite side of that, and this is kind of what I was impressed about to speak this quickly this morning, is that part of the reason that we steer away from animals and animal products and processed foods and sugar is because there are systems in our body that were ordained by God that start when we are conceived. And as those systems start moving, they're moving pretty well, not a whole lot of problems going. And then we give birth to these babies. And for the first year or so, 6 months, we're giving them formula or breast milk. And then at 6 months, we start to introduce them to food. And we also then begin to introduce them to a lot of the habits that we have. And some of those things can be challenging for our bodies. When it comes to the consumption of animal products, particularly the protein in the animal product tends to escalate the growth of problems in the body leading towards disease. In addition to that, when we eat the products of milk and cheese and butter, there are some casomorphins in there that lend towards addiction. They hit the receptors in the brain the same way a drug would, and that leads to addiction. Then you have the fats in the body, in the animal products. Cheese is nothing really but saturated fat. And when you are consuming a bunch of saturated fat, and this is one of the things we did when our family started eating this way, we ate a lot of pizza. Pizza was the only food that I could keep down when I was pregnant with my son 30 years ago. Pizza and bubble gum. I just puked everything else up. So we started eating pizza, and wouldn't you know, my son loved pizza when he was born. But when we decided to eat this way, we took a pizza one day on purpose, and we peeled the cheese off of it and let the cheese just sit literally on top of the pizza box. And within minutes, that gooey, melty cheese had turned into this hard mass that you had to lift up with the fork, and you flipped it over, and it was solid. Well, animal fat is solid at body temperature. Animal fat is good for animals in their blood, but when we consume it, it's solid at body temperature. So that makes all the digestive processes harder. That makes blood vessels harder. That messes with our hormones. That makes it harder for our food to pass through the digestive system, because fat takes so much longer to digest when we eat plant food. But then when we eat animal fat on top of it, then it really causes some problem, and it triggers a lot of diseases, particularly things like heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune diseases are triggered by this as well. It helps us gain weight unnecessarily, clogs things. So that's one of the reasons that we don't eat that. The other thing is, when you're eating animal products, unless you have taken the animal yourself or you have bought it from a place that does kosher meat, which is biblical. In the Bible, when God gave us permission to eat meat, there were some specific things that never should you eat the blood or the fat. It should be an abomination unto you. And so if you're eating kosher meat, which of course we associate with Bible and Jews and Muslims, but in the African American community, I was watching my friend Pernessa this week, and she buried an uncle, and she posted some pictures of her family plot where they buried him and some other buildings, and it reminded me of a lot of communities and homesteads where we came from. And when our families were on those properties and they were raising the animals and they killed the animals, those animals were not afraid. They didn't know that they were going to die. They were killed biblically. Calmly, slit the throat, all the blood was drained out, all the fat was removed. So we were eating pretty much kosher meat. When we don't eat kosher meat, whatever is in the blood, when the Bible says the life is in the blood of the animal, whatever is in the blood of the animal is on your plate when you barbecue it and fry it and shred it and mix it in a casserole. And so when the blood of the animal enters your blood, then it can also trigger some things, because you're human, they're not, and it can cause some diseases. The other thing about consuming a lot of processed foods and sugary foods, sugar causes the immune system to almost shut down. I graduated from Loma Linda University. There was a study that was done there, and while you're at Loma Linda, students can get in all kinds of studies. There was a study that was done there that measured the blood of students and checked to see how many bacteria the white blood cells could kill. And they did it without any sugar being consumed. And then they started adding teaspoons of sugar. And of course, the more sugar they added, the least number of bacteria, the white blood cells, were killed. So when your immune system has been attacked and has been weakened, it's kind of hard for the body to protect itself. And so when you think about the fact that we're eating animal products and animals and unclean animals according to the word of God, and sugar and processed foods, it's no wonder that so many of us struggle with disease like I did, with headaches, and you name it, you have it, and are challenged to reverse it. But one of the best ways to reverse it is to get off of that stuff, cut it loose, and watch the body change. The other thing for me personally was caffeine, and caffeine turned out to be, we all are familiar with how it messes with the brain and interacts with the receptor sites in the brain and causes the caffeine to have you moving rather than your brain telling you to move with the neurotransmitters. But for women especially, and when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, the lump that we found, we had seen a few years before and were following because it behaved just like a lump I'd had previously. But when we did the mammogram, we discovered there were some calcifications and some other things, and it turned out that it was invasive progressive metastatic breast cancer. You all know the rest of the story. Well, one of the things that women, especially women of color, have is fibrocystic breast disease. And when you go to your OBGYN, one of my good friends, Dr. Jacqueline Sylvester, is an OBGYN here in Huntsville. And in my visits to my physicians over the years, OBGYNs, they wanted to know how much caffeine I consume. And because I didn't drink coffee, I didn't drink the colas and everything, I'm thinking I'm okay. And I was rationalizing the amount of chocolate that I ate. While we didn't serve it in our home, I could eat a bunch of it when I was out. And so I discovered that the caffeine changes the nature of the breast tissue, leading to the development of non-cancerous tumors, fibroid adenomas, which can lead to the development of breast cancer or cancerous tumors, which is what I believe happened in my case. And so I got off all the animal products. I got off the regular sugar. I got rid of all the caffeine, which for me was coming from chocolate. And in the first 6 months post my diagnosis, all of the lumps that were fibrocystic, because I had breast cancer and the fibrocystic breast disease as well, were also gone. So I'm hoping that this information gives you, yeah, I see some of the faces that you're making here. Some of the other kinds of things. I see Paula says, Kroger, don't seek kosher meat. I have found kosher meat here in Huntsville for the people who are still eating flesh. Desiree, my niece, I'm so excited you're almost vegan. That you can get kosher meat from Publix. I have seen it. I've talked to the people about it. If you live in a place like Atlanta, DC, there are communities that are kosher. If you have any Muslim friends, ask them where they shop. But of course, like my cousin is saying here, cutting it loose is you will see how your body changes completely. My cousin, who has been trying to lose weight and been very faithful exercising over the last several years, decided this year she was going to be vegetarian. And in the last 2 months, I believe it is, she's gone totally vegan and lost 35 pounds in the last 2 months that she had been struggling to use over the last couple of years. So there are some benefits. Okay, that's my little catch up for today. The other thing that we're talking about today is cut and stuff loose. And those of you who have the book should be able to turn to the page where we're talking about it. And on this, in this session today, I'm really talking about stress and how it impacts your life. One of the things that I share in the first book, Cooking Up Good Health, something to shout about, is my story. And at the time that I was diagnosed with breast cancer, we had relocated from South Carolina to Atlanta. I was working for Morehouse School of Medicine. And then I left that job after my diagnosis and I went to work for the state office, the Office of Nutrition for the state of Georgia. And while I was working there, I was teaching people, of course, how to make better choices for their life. But as I was navigating my way through this breast cancer, I really had to address the things that were causing me stress. And in the book, I talk about those things. Some of those things were, I had a student that died. I was working hard. I lived in Atlanta on the suburbs. I drove into town every day trying to beat the traffic. My parents had just moved to the city. My brother had announced that he had AIDS. My husband and I were navigating our way through challenge in our marriage. I'm raising a child, you know, all the stuff that goes along with it. And when I got the diagnosis for breast cancer, it just kind of put the brakes on everything. And then the first day that I took my radiation, I'm laying on the table and the people are moving all around me. They're all covered up so that they wouldn't get any negative effects of the radiation that they were giving me. And I'm laying there and tears are just rolling down my face. And I'm like, Lord Jesus, nobody can sit here and take this from me. I have to do this for myself. What are some other things that I can do personally to help my body respond? And I started to look at the things that I was doing, and I had to make some serious choices. Was I going to continue to live the way that I was living and work the way that I was working and interact with people the way that I was interacting, or was I going to cut some stuff loose? Well, those of you who are my good friends from years ago know I decided to cut some stuff loose. And one of the first things I cut loose were relationships that were weighing on me heavily. And I just decided I'm not going to do that anymore because y'all are stressing me out. And it's about my health and I need to make some changes. The other thing, of course, was I changed my diet. The next thing was I changed how I exercise. Instead of being inside all the time, I started exercising outside. I changed how I slept. I'm in the bed every night between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And in recent years, I have strayed away from that. And so the last few months, I've gone back to it so that my body can recover. I have also decided the power in the word no. And many of us who've grown up in homes or relationships where we're codependent, and I was codependent, it's hard for us to say no. We feel like we have to explain to people why we're saying no. We're saying no because my body is the temple of God, and I don't have to do that because I love him. That's it. And then when I started teaching other people how to do this, because this was habit for me of always saying yes, I was still tempted to do for other people. And my physician, Dr. Scott Grievous, had to tell me, Donna, back up. You don't have to do this for all these people. God loves them more than you, and he will take care of it. And so I had to make that decision as well. Then I had to decide how much of what I was going to do was I going to continue to do. I had to let some responsibilities go. One of the things that shook me to my core one morning as I was heading to work, my son comes to ask me, he hugged me before I go, and I told him I didn't have time because I had to get on I-20 before the traffic went crazy, and I was not getting stuck in the traffic that day. And I was rebuked all the way to work. How you going to tell your 6 or 7-year-old child you don't have time to hug them? And so I decided that I wasn't going to work quite as hard so that I could spend time with my son and do the things that I needed to do. Then I had to look at the dynamics of what was going on in my own home with my husband and I. And there are details that will remain between my husband and me. But one of the things that we decided to do was to get some therapy. And it was a challenge for him because he wasn't comfortable with it. So we ended up getting a workbook to work through. And as we started going through the workbook, there were some things in there that hit on some nerves, and we put it aside, and we didn't go back to it for years, literally. And it was during that time that I did some things to myself, discovering my own codependency, looking for answers for that, and how I could navigate my way out of it so that my family wouldn't be so negatively affected and my health could continue to grow. And it kept bobbing its ugly head because the word of God says that we are born in sin, shapen in iniquity. Children learn what they live. We visit the iniquities upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation. And there's some serious signs that goes along with generational sin, not the kind where you are killing somebody or lusting after somebody's wife, but just behaviors that are not good for us that we continue to do because we've seen it and we've learned how to cope with it. And so I really had to work on some of that stuff and figure out how I could get it. And as a mother in our home, wife, I felt real responsible for it, but I had to learn how to stop where it was taking me back over to codependency and stressing me out. And so before our son left home, we decided that we were going to do some things as a family. And then as he was leaving, we were able to actually put ourselves in some therapy. We used some of the writings and interactions with David and Beverly Sedlacek, with Dr. Kitson Francis. My husband has done some things with Celebrate Recovery. My son has also found his own therapist that he is working with. And Black people and the literature is clear with this, that we believe in prayer, and so do I. And we tend not to believe in therapy or help. But you can do both. Faith without works is dead. And when you look in the Bible at the stories of Jesus when he came on earth and was walking around helping people to realize who they really were. You're not who they're telling you you are. You are my child, made in my image. And you can live better than this because I'm here sacrificing my life for you. And he sat down with the woman at the well, and he told her she was lying. She was in denial about who she really was and what she needed to do. And he told her that he was who she needed. So God, I believe, with Jesus was given therapy. And we tend to miss that. We stay on the prayer part, but we forget the therapy part. Somebody was so afraid that he had to come to Jesus at night. I believe it was Nicodemus, because he was ashamed of what people would think of him. So he came to Jesus at night, and Jesus talked to him. But Jesus has given him steps to take. And because he's not physically here with us anymore, we can talk to him through the power of the Holy Spirit, but then we can ask the Holy Spirit to lead us to bodies of people who are like-minded, who are trained, who can walk us through this so that we can have victory over all of this stuff. Some of the things that we use as resources were a couple of these books. Our son, Edward Goodman IV, Ivy, found this book, Andy Stanley, Enemies of the Heart, which was a great resource for us, and it's going to be touching up on all your stuff if you want to get rid of the stress. The other one is this book by Dr. Dick Tibbetts, Forgive to Live, which was amazing. In my own family, you all know us growing up, but inside our home, we struggle with stuff because we're human. And as my father was dying, I was dealing with some stuff, as were my mom and my brother. And I'm like, listen, this man gonna die and go to heaven. And when Jesus comes, then I'm gonna be in hell because I'm mad over some stuff that went down. And so I prayed about it. And I talked to my brother and my mom about some things. And one day when Daddy was in the hospital, we got a call from him, and he asked us to come to the hospital unsolicited. And when we got there, he's pouring out his heart, and he couldn't change the things that he had done, but he apologized for so many of the things that he had done in our family that had impacted us. And this whole burden was just lifted. And I felt so much better, as did the rest of us. And so sometimes it takes that. And then sometimes forgiveness is for you and not the person who offended you and is making you crazy. Because we know that it's not good to eat potato chips and drink alcohol and all that sort of stuff. But we do it because it's comforting us about something else that's going on deep inside. The other book that I recommend is Anatomy of the Soul, and this is by a physician, Kurt Thompson, MD. Excellent, excellent, excellent resource for you as you walk through cutting stuff loose. And I want you to be victorious in this cutting stuff loose. And then for those of you who are in the group, the Cooking Up Good Health private group, I've already posted a link in there about this guy, Dr. David Williams. And now I'm talking ethnic stuff right here, right now. We are entering a time in this country where things that we thought have been handled, we see have only been buried, and the seeds have been watered, and now they're popping up all over the place. And Dr. David Williams does some excellent conversation about the impact of racism on people, and we could extend that to sexism and ageism and all that sort of stuff. But because most of you who are listening to me every week look like me, you must know that the constant experience of being Black in America, or being Black in the world for that matter, impacts our bodies. And this fight or flight syndrome response that God has given us, when something happens to us, we are enabled immediately to run from it or fight our way through it. And when something is continually impacting you, you're overworking, you're not making enough money, your bills aren't being paid, you're overweight, there's drama with your loved ones, your child is in jail. You know the list of stuff that goes on. Just living in Atlanta for me after a while, getting on the interstate, gave me that fight or flight feeling inside. And when you're constantly living like that, there are substances in your body that are released to help you get out of the situation. But when you don't get out of the situation, those substances continue to be released, cortisol, and it can cause some problems. And so I know there are a lot of theories about why Black folk have more hypertension and diabetes, and there are a list of things. But one of the things is because we stay in a sense of fight or flight, because of the things that are constantly thrown at us just for being who we are. And so sometimes when you're cutting stuff loose, you cannot change how a person treats you or the situation that you're in, but you can definitely change your response to it. And I think one of the greatest examples of that were the people who lived during the civil rights movement. And many of you who are my age, your parents, my best friend Joanne Dixon Smith, her mom and daddy were on the line when the hoses were going. And when you look back at those tapes and watch those people, they were under stress, but they were not stressed because they had this peace in their hearts about who they were and the journey they were on. And so when you're home, when that child is upset with you, remember, you're his mama or daddy. That's the journey you're on. Don't let what is stressing you stress you out, okay? When I think about how today we are treated in this country just because of what we look like, remember who you are and whose battle this is and what the enemy is trying to do to you. And remember that he came to give us life and power more abundantly in order for you to overcome it. You don't have to do it. And when I look at the greatest example of him who gave himself for us, when he gave his life for us, and they're calling him everything but who he was. And he was not guilty of what they said. And according to the Bible, he looked like me. And so this attack is nothing new. It's something historical and it's something demonic. And the only way that you can face it is to cut your response loose and give it to God so that he can help you navigate your way through it. The other thing is, remember that whatever you're doing, if you're raising children, you're going to impact your kids and the way that how they respond to stress. My husband and I used to laugh about the potato chips that I like to eat. And if you know me, you know I love potato chips. I had an aunt who told me one day that I was going to turn over, my husband was going to turn over, and I was just going to go crunch into bed because I ate so many potato chips. And I couldn't understand why potato chips gave me such comfort. And it had to be a certain brand, and I had to eat them. And whenever I was stressed, I noticed if I could grab a bag of potato chips and ate those chips, I would feel better. And then one day as I was talking to my husband about it, I remember clear as a bell, as a little girl, shopping with my mom and seeing her appear to be stressed. I didn't know what was stressing her, but she would reach for a bag of potato chips. We had been shopping. She'd go in the bag, she'd open them up, and she'd start eating them. And as I watched her, her body would just start to relax. You know how it is when you get whatever it is you comfort yourself with. And I thought, that must be what I saw modeled, and that's what I reached for. And so when I had that moment, I'm like, okay, I still like potato chips, so I can't eat a whole bag at a time. But when I'm stressed, I'm going to have to address what's causing the stress. And in my own marriage, just last week, my husband and I had a conversation about something that he was concerned about with me. And he was hesitant to talk about it because he was so stressed about it. And as he talked it through, he had a physical, visceral reaction. And we talked about that. And then as he responded, as I listened to him and I started hearing his heart and what he was saying, I then had to take what he said and not let it make me crazy and respond to it. And it was an opportunity for us to not allow the stress around us to stress us out. There's a song that he'll give you peace in the midst of the storm. We are headed into the storm. We think we've seen the storm. It's about to be so bad, y'all, that the only way that you're going to make it through this is if you are not stressed by the stress and that you have a peace inside of you and you learn to cut stuff loose. And it's kind of like when you go into a marriage relationship and all y'all bring the suitcase on your back that's full of stuff you don't even know that's there. Cut it loose. Take it out. Cut it loose. The journey gets sweeter, the burden is lighter, you feel better, your health responds, because sometimes you can be eating a plant-based diet, you can be exercising, you can be doing all of that. But if you're still stressed out about some things, you need to face them head on. And like the woman at the well that Jesus talked to, many times we get to the place where, okay, I'm stressed about that, I'm mad about the other thing. But I don't want to go there. You have to go there. You have to go there. You have to feel it. You have to go through it because victory is on the other side of through. What's that song? There's a blessing on the other side of through. So when Jesus talked to that woman, he's like, where's your husband? Well, you know what? He said, thou hast said, because this how many you have, and the one you with now ain't yours. Well, never a man spoke to me like that, which says to me that woman had issues from somewhere dealing with men if she's going from man to man to man. But when this man spoke to her, she knew a difference right away. And then after Jesus told her what he could do for her and lifted her burden, she went back to the village and she went to the men of the village and told the men, come see a man who has been saying and doing stuff for me in this instant who has changed my life. She could have chosen to stay in denial, But she instead decided to let him touch the pain, help her walk through the pain. And once she got through the pain, on the other side of through, there were other people that she could then share her experience with and be a blessing for others. And that's something that I have talked about when we first started talking about taking this journey to better health. When you deal with your stuff, eating better, living better, sleeping better, relating better to other people, then you are a living testimony of how you can be a blessing to other people. I'm going to put this plug in for Pernessa Seal. If she's still on, I don't know, but let me tell you this. For the last few years, I have been attending the Healthy Churches 2020 conference, which she founded. And when you get to these meetings, the burden on their heart is our people are suffering. How can we make a difference? And the church is the place where we can give the balm in Gilead to people who need this information. And when somebody does it for you, go through the Gospels, look at all the people that Jesus healed and how they went and told somebody else, and it was like throwing a rock on the water, and it kept going further and further and further. And only when we get to heaven are we really going to know the impact of the burden that God allowed us to bear, that he could lighten so that we could be a blessing to other people. I am scrolling through here. I don't know that I see a whole bunch of questions. I see my friend Regina. Good morning, Regina Barnes. Consuela, I see you too. Ruth Butler, my niece Carmen. Hugh Washington, glad to see you. Quinn Cousins in the room. I see you too. Are there any questions before we end this that I can address right quickly? I made sure that you have the recipe at the top of the feed for today. They're behind me. Let me see. Maybe that's what I'll do. This is the muffin now. The icing has settled down. This is what it looks like inside. That's what I'm going to do. That's how we're going to end this call. We're going to break this in half so you can see the inside of it. Yes. Let me see how it tastes. Perfect. You have the recipe. If you make these muffins now and make a smoothie for breakfast, you're going to relax your nerves and be able to deal with whatever God has coming down the pike for you today. I am so enjoying these sessions, and I hope they're being a blessing to you. And I hope that as you do this, you are sharing it with other people. Deidre Dennis is saying, a peace comes when we know God goes before us, making smooth, easy, and clears out the way. No person, place, or thing outside condition can affect me. I am power. I am worthy. I'm free. I'm creative. I'm unique. I'm confident. And so it is. And walk in the promises of God. That's all you're doing. We are breaking every chain and delivering people who are chained as well. Hope you have a great week. It's 8 o'clock. Camille Kibler is the only one who can get to my house before all this is gone. The rest of you have to go make it yourself. These muffins are delicious. Eddie, you can have a couple of these, babe. Hope you have an amazing week. We'll join you next Sunday again. Be sure to share this video with your friends. Visit me at our website, lifestyletherapeutics.com. Visit me or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Still Shoutin'. And go to the YouTube channel, Lifestyle Therapeutics, where you can see the cooking shows and other things that we're uploading that you can make yourself and share with other people on their journey to better health. It's been a joy. Got some more stuff I got to do. Have a great day. Love you, Pernessa. Have a good day. Talk to you soon. Bye.